Welcome to Heroes First Podcast, sponsored by Fund the First, the nation's leading verified crowdfunding platform for first responders, military, and medical professionals. And now, your host, broadcasting from Long Island, New York, Robert Garland.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining this week's episode of Heroes First Podcast. Each week, you will hear from a new guest that portrays excellence in the first responder, military, or medical professional field. If you are an active or retired member of the service, or even a family member or a friend, then this show is for you. I would like to now present to you our guest for episode 4 of this podcast series, Michael Sugrue. Michael, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to connect with you. And I want to take a step back for a second on how we connected. And I'm not sure if you actually know this story. I know months ago we connected and we talked over the phone with one of our team members at Fund the First, and that's Mitchell. Mitchell was head over heels for you. So impressed with everything. He's like, you got to check out this guy, Michael Sugrue. He's all over the place. He's on LinkedIn. He's on Instagram. He's on Facebook. Check it out. And I'm like, okay, Mitch. And he gets really excited about things. And usually he's right. And I go to your profile. I'm like, holy cow, you got 30,000 followers. It's insane on LinkedIn. And you're really doing some great things in the community. It's absolutely incredible. And I'm like, you know what, Mitch, you're right. We need to get this guy on the phone. We got to connect with him. And he's, after speaking with you that first time and seeing everything you do, it's absolutely incredible. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to jump into a lot of things with you. You got an incredible background. I mean, you got U.S. Air Force, City of Walnut Creek as police officer and a sergeant, right?
Sure.
You did time with the Department of Justice and the task force as a detective.
Yes.
And huge keynote speaker, mental health advocate. And I know you got a book in the works, so we'll definitely bring that up. I'm excited to hear more. So, how did you start off your career in the Air Force? That's where you started, right?
It was, yeah. Actually, it started back in college. I did the Air Force ROTC program, and I had a full scholarship to college. And my choice was to go into military law enforcement, which is what I did in the Air Force. It's called Security Forces. And out of college, I had a 4-year commitment, and I knew I was going to do that. The original plan was to go into federal law enforcement once that initial commitment was up. But then they offered me Germany, and I couldn't pass the opportunity to live overseas. And so I extended for a couple more years, and I ended up getting out in 2004.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for your service. So how was it like over there?
I loved it. I did so much traveling and saw things that I would never see otherwise. I think I've been to close to 34 countries.
Wow.
And while I was actually in the service, I spent time in the Middle East and South America, all over Europe, and of course, all over the States. But the experience was just amazing. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Did you have any specialties in the Air Force?
Security Forces, and I was also what's called a Phoenix Raven, which is a subset of the Security Forces career field. And when I started out, I was a lieutenant, so I was mostly in a management supervisory role, but I still got to do some fun stuff as well. By the time I got out, I was actually chief of Security Forces here in California at Travis Air Force Base. But yeah, the experiences, the camaraderie, the friendships. I mean, to this day, some of my best friends are people I served with in the Air Force. I mean, it truly was a special experience.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Thank you. That's something my wife always speaks about. She wishes she went into the Air Force. So she ended up becoming a cop, which is fine. But, the Air Force is something she wanted to do, the Army. But thank you. Thank you. So now where did your career go after that?
So I applied to a few departments out here. I live in Northern California, and I'm just outside the San Francisco Bay Area. And I applied to a bunch of different agencies: Sacramento PD, Richmond PD, Walnut Creek Sheriff's Department. And I ended up taking the job with Walnut Creek Police Department, which is about 30 minutes outside of San Francisco. And I went to the academy in July of 2004, graduated in December, and I ended up getting hired and serving right away there.
Wow, that's great. So you started off as a police officer, I'm assuming, on patrol. How's the area over there?
That city is actually a nice city. It's more upscale. It's a destination city where people come to dine and to shop. There's a lot of businesses there. So during the day, it's different than at night. Most of our crime is transient, so it's people that are passing through. There's 2 major highways that go through the actual city. And so we get a lot of people that are stopping off and committing crimes. but generally it's a nice city. I mean, if you're looking for a place to live in Northern California, that's definitely one of the spots to live.
Oh, good. I think California was definitely last on my list to go to.
Well, I'm trying to leave now, so
Texas. We got to go to Texas.
I love Texas.
Yeah, Texas is unreal. I'm talking to a guy, he's in real estate and he's actually does real estate in Canada, but he brought up Texas too. He's like, it's unbelievable. It's
It
really
is.
unbelievable.
I spent a lot of time in San Antonio and also some time in Austin, and I loved it. I
Okay.
mean, people there are nice, great place to raise your family. It's cheap. Yeah, it's just a good place to be.
Yeah. So you got 16 years on the job. I'm 17 actually. You're going 17 and you're still active with Walnut Creek, or you retired?
No, so I had 6.5 years active duty Air Force, and then I had
Okay.
about 14 years on the civilian side. So almost 21 years total in law
Excellent.
enforcement. I
Excellent.
medically retired actually in July of 2018.
Okay. All right. Very good. And you retired as a sergeant?
I did.
Excellent. Excellent. So how did you do time with the Department of Justice? It's incredible how you were in so many different positions. I love it.
So where I worked, we had county drug task force that were run by State Department of Justice. And
Okay.
since day one of my law enforcement career, that was my goal. It was my dream. It was my aspiration. And so as a patrol officer, I was super proactive. I mean, to the point where I pissed off all my beat partners and I was doing, I mean, probably 20, 30 proactive stops a day and literally 1 to 2 arrests a day with probably 12 to 14 sites. I mean, I loved it. And my whole goal was to get guns and dope off the street. And so for our agency, they only have one slot on this task force. And once you're in it, you're usually in it for 4 to 5 years, it gets locked up. And so I kind of planned out my career. And when that thing opened up, I went for it and I got selected. And that was to this day the best time of my career. I mean, it was phenomenal. I got to work in the entire Bay Area. I mean, we also went down to the US Mexico border and did some training down there. We were all over the place. And the stuff that I saw, wiretap investigations, surveillance from planes and helicopters to cartel cases. I mean, it was to this day. I mean, I look back fondly on those memories. It was amazing.
Those wire investigations is something else. My team, when I was in narcotics, I was actually in a gang module, and it was a wire case for about 18 months that I was running. We had 38 subjects across 6 states. And,
Wow.
it's working those cases, it's something else. And, again, getting those drugs off the streets, it's great, but it never ends. You know,
Exactly.
it never ends. As much damage as you're doing to really make an impact in the community, to clean it up for a little while, someone else steps right in,
Well, here
you
in
know.
California, they legalized everything.
I
So,
know.
I mean, I used to work my cases off informants who wanted to work these cases off, and now you got nothing to hold over their heads. So, I mean, everything's a
Yeah,
misdemeanor or it's legal. I mean, it's nothing out here. So,
yeah, yeah. No one wants to buy guns anymore either. So it's just like it's done.
times have changed for sure.
Oh yeah, they've
Not the good
changed.
old days.
They've changed. So what else? So you were a teacher also. You did a little time as a professor?
So when I was actually in the Air Force and when I was deployed to Saudi Arabia, I was hired by the University of Maryland to actually teach a law enforcement stress class, so college level class. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I had some of my partners that were doing it and they told me about the opportunity. So again, I jumped on it and I was actually teaching they were reservists who were deployed to the Middle East, but they were full-time cops back home and they were trying to finish up their degrees. So yeah, it was,
Wow.
it was a great experience.
Well, it's definitely a great experience. Did you give tests?
We watch a lot of videos. It's cops, you know what I mean? You can't make it too
Yeah.
hard.
Oh man, yeah, that's a whole other subject. But I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Um, but yeah, you've had such an incredible career. What's your favorite part of your career? And obviously, I know you love the Air Force and being a cop, but there's got to be one impactful moment that you could look back on and say, okay, that's the reason I did this.
That's a tough one, honestly. I mean, I'm there right now. So my
Right.
career, I had a very traumatic incident that happened, which was not a fond memory or fun. It was a horrible incident, but that brought me to where I'm at today. And the crazy thing is that I always wanted to make a difference and touch lives. And I did that, but you know what? I don't think I really changed too many lives. I don't really think I saved all that many lives. But the work that I'm doing right now, I truly believe I'm making a real difference, a tangible difference. And I'm just blessed to be where I'm at now.
No, that's great. So tell us about your keynote speaking, what you really specialize in, mental health. I want to hear more about this book, what you're writing about, and these the people you're working with. I definitely want to hear about that.
So, as I mentioned, the traumatic incident, I was a brand new sergeant 2 weeks on, solo right after Christmas, and I was involved in a fatal shooting where I had to kill a guy. He had a butcher knife, was trying to kill a couple inside a condo, and then he tried to kill my partners and I. And we were sued federally right away. At that point, my life kind of started a downward spiral. I didn't realize the toll and the effect that the incident had on me, but I was isolating. I started drinking more. I started having marital problems. Eventually, I lost my marriage. I was doing high risk behavior. I was putting myself in really dangerous situations at work, just putting my officer safety aside. I mean, just horrible, horrible things were happening. I actually came down with a bunch of skin cancer, which I truly believe was brought on by stress. I lost my father, who was a decorated lieutenant here in the Bay Area, and he was my everything. He's the reason why I became a police officer in the first place. And this federal lawsuit, it drug on for 4 years. I was actually a defendant in San Francisco, like the worst place to be on federal court. And this trial, lasted 2 weeks. And the guy that I killed, he had an identical twin brother who was in the courtroom just feet away from me. So you can imagine, here I am having nightmares for 4 years of this face that I just can't get out of my mind. And I'm looking over my shoulder and it's the exact same face that I'm seeing. And this just decimated me as a person. I mean, I lost everything. And I was to the point where I didn't care if I lived or died. I literally was hoping that I died on duty. And a tragic incident happened right after my federal trial ended. So my shooting happened December 2012. My federal trial didn't go till September 2016. November 2016, my best friend, he's a Vietnam veteran, but he was a reserve officer where I worked. He tried to kill himself when I was on duty. Slashed both wrists, stabbed himself in the torso, OD'd on a bunch of meds. And I saw him right before they rushed him into emergency surgery. And I thought he was going to die. And thank God he didn't. He's alive today. But a month after that is when I got the strength and courage to finally ask for help. I'd been suffering for 4 years. I don't even know how I made it through that looking back. I was under so much turmoil and stress and just devastation, losing everything. And when he tried to take his life, and I saw the impact that it had on me personally, but on his family and his friends, I realized I couldn't do that to my daughter. I've got a young daughter, and I just realized I could not do that to her. And that's why I asked for help. And then I started a 2-year journey of recovery. And now I'm on the other side of that recovery. So what I talk about is my journey through this whole thing, about how I almost lost it all, but more importantly, how I came out the other side. And I'm at a point now where I have a better life than I've ever had. I mean, I am truly, truly blessed. And there is a new life on the other side. And that's what I talk about, is I want to get rid of this stigma that prevents all first responders and military from asking for help, because I was ashamed. I thought it was weakness. And looking at it now, it was the strongest, bravest, most courageous thing I've ever done. Nothing I did in the military, nothing I did undercover on the streets. It was asking for help. And so I'm just out there putting myself out there saying, look, I know you're suffering in silence, but I'm going to tell you my story. And it resonates with so many, because I'm not special. What I went through is not special. There are so many of our brothers and sisters, many probably listening right now, that are truly suffering in silence because they're afraid to ask for help.
No, you're right. There's so many guys, law enforcement, all these positions where they don't want to ask for help. And it comes down to pride. But it's incredible that you were able to do that and, pull yourself out of what you were going through. And, I feel horrible for what you've gone through, but here you are today, you know, here you are today, you're making an impact.
And it wasn't easy. It took a lot of work, and it took a lot of different things, a lot of different pieces. This isn't something you can do on your own.
Mhm.
You truly need to get help for this, but the right help, the people that you can trust, the people that get it and really understand it.
So this is all going in your book. What kind of advice I know you touched on it with what you've gone through, but what kind of advice would you really give to people that are, struggling with internal conflict? Because there's guys in the job that may not be going through something on the job necessarily, but maybe something that's off duty, and they don't want to talk about it. And you think that everything's fine when they're at work because they're smiling, they're laughing, they're joking around, but something internally is eating away at them, and they don't know how to talk about it.
Well, the fact is that we see so much trauma and so many bad things. And when we have these problems outside of work, they truly are related to our work. That's the thing is, if we're having marital problems, if we're having financial problems, a lot of first responders, they turn to like alcohol, to drugs, extramarital affairs, porn addiction, you name it, gambling. These are the things they do to numb themselves and forget about the real reason why they're suffering. The reason why they're suffering is because they don't talk about their feelings. They don't talk about the impact of all these calls that we go to that they have on them. I certainly didn't do that. I didn't talk to anybody in my agency, but I didn't talk to my own family. And that's where I screwed up. We all got loved ones and family and friends. We got spouses, brothers, sisters. And I'm not saying tell them all the details, but they think when we're having a bad day, it's because of them. They don't realize it's because of what we saw on the job. And the fact is that in a normal law enforcement career, minimum, you're talking about 500 traumatic incidents over a career, upwards of like 1,000. A normal person, maybe one, maybe two for an entire lifetime. And the facts are that as law enforcement officers and all first responders and even military for that matter, we're much more likely to die by our own hands than the hands of another. It's a fact. This year so far, and we're just into 2021, we have 4 reported law enforcement suicides. Last year, we had 173. And the year before that, we had 239. And the thing is, these numbers, they're high and they're shocking, but they're still underreported. Still underreported. The fact is, you hear about the solo car into a tree, the patrol car, or the patrol car into the cement sound barrier. Man, it was a bad accident at work. They died in the line of duty. How many of those are actual suicides? And I was there. I'm telling you, I was there. That's what I was thinking. Because people wouldn't know anything about it. They wouldn't second guess it. Man, he died a hero. He died on the job. His family's taken care of. There's no shame in that. But I felt shame in asking for help. And the fact is that our loved ones, they need us physically here. They don't need our pension. They don't need our paycheck. They don't need to go visit some statue at a memorial. They need us there and they need us fully present. And so the biggest thing you got to do is you got to start talking about it. And I know it's not easy because I didn't feel like there was anybody I could trust. And that's the key part is you got to find people you can trust. Out here in California and all over the US, we have peer support meetings. These aren't ones that are run through. These are ones that are just based on geographics and they're open to all first responders. And you meet people just like yourself. It's confidential. They don't know where you work. You don't know where they work, but they're sharing and they're being real. And I'm seeing grown men and women share things they've never shared their entire lifetime, not even with their own spouses. I mean, think about that. We talk about our brothers and sisters in blue who are going to have our back, and we know they will. If we're going into an active shooter situation, I know they're going to be there. But why can't I turn to them and ask for help or just let them know, man, that fatal car accident we just went to, man, that I can't get that out of my head. I keep picturing my daughter in that back seat. Just talk about it. We're human. It's normal. Don't keep it bottled up like I did.
This is such a powerful, powerful message, and I feel like it should be broadcasted across every news station across the nation because our brothers and sisters in blue and all first responders, military, medical professionals, we're all going through this. Everyone's had a situation in their career where they've gone through this. I don't care who you are, and you know this, you've gone through it. I have tons of situations working through narcotics, working through patrol, working through anti-crime, and you know what the worst one is? It's not hitting the door and having a gun, pointed at your head. It's seeing someone get run over right in front of you. It's seeing that, and it's not talking to anybody after that and still having dreams about it. you know?
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, think about how many suicides we've gone to, how many fatal car accidents, child deaths, domestic violence, child abuse. You know, a lot of times our first responders think it has to be some big traumatic incident or a shooting. It's not about that. I'm talking about cumulative trauma, you know, day in and day out. And we're in such a hurry to go from call to call to call. We never take the time to stop and really just pause for a moment and absorb it and talk about it and think about it. You know, I call it gallows humor, but the way I learned it was we joked about it. You know, you went to some horrible call, you saw some horrible things. I learned it from the training program. You know, the first week in FTO, it's like, okay, well, that's how we deal with it. We don't talk about it. We just joke about it and brush it off. It doesn't bother us. But the thing is, we care. We got into this profession for a reason because we care about people. We care about making a difference. And I don't care who you are. When you see that stuff, it has an absolute effect on you and you have to address it.
It's got to be spoken about. It's, you know, a lot of pride comes into it and people just don't want to talk and they close off. You know, they really close off. And this is, I mean, Michael, your message is incredible. I mean, so I'm assuming you've been doing, you do a lot of traveling and you speak about this.
Well, right now, because of COVID, it's all virtual,
Yeah, all
unfortunately.
virtual. Yeah.
But lately, I've been speaking, you know, Australia, Canada. You know, it's the thing is, the message is starting to get out, but there's not a lot of people out there like myself that are willing to talk about it. That's the key. And I
Because
get
they're
it.
afraid. They're afraid the same way they're afraid to talk about their own incidents. It's the same thing.
Absolutely. But it's not just that. You know, there is some real administrative betrayal out there.
Oh, yeah.
And there are a lot of work consequences. And that's where you have to have an agency that believes in this culture and supports you. You know, if you don't have that, why would you ask for help? Why would you raise your hand? Because when you know you put yourself out there, you're going to be on an island and nobody's going to support you and everyone's going to turn their back on you. And that's not right. I mean, especially right now, we're talking about in this era of defund the police and everything that's going on. I mean, they have no support from their administration, not from politicians, not from city governments, county governments, not from the public. And that's my biggest fear is that my fear is these numbers are going to rise even higher because we're in unprecedented times for anti-law enforcement sentiment. And we need to change that. We need to educate the general public to let them know, like I said, we are human. We are people. We are just like them. They need
Oh,
to
yeah.
realize what we're exposed to. They don't have a clue.
No, they don't. They don't know the human nature side of this. We're all human, and we want to go home to our families. That's the most important part. You know, we speak. You know, on our team, we go on radio shows, and we've been on radio shows in different countries before. I was on one in London the other night, and that's the first thing that they were asking about me. How is it actually being a cop, the human side of things? You know, and this is what we were speaking about. You know, the most important thing is going home to your family safely at the end of the night. You know, but at the same time, the point that you're bringing up is mental stability. You know, everyone needs that. They need the mental stability. They need someone to speak to about what they're going through, what they see at work, you know, regardless of it not seeming that traumatic at the moment. But at some point in their life, it's going to be traumatic and you're going to look back at it.
And that's the thing, you know, as first responders, if we have a knee injury, if we have a back injury or shoulder injury, we're willing to address that. We're willing to go see a doctor for that and get it fixed or take medications. The thing is, this is post-traumatic stress injury. It's been proven there's a physical and chemical change to the brain as a result to exposure to trauma. It's a fact. It's an injury. And that's where we need to change that stigma. You can fix it, you can heal it, you can get better, and you can return to the job. But more importantly, you can return to life. That's more important than any job is returning to life and being present.
Mm-hmm.
You know, stop numbing yourself with alcohol and drugs and extramarital affairs and all this other stuff. Be present for your family, but you got to work on yourself first. You got to do the work, but you got to ask for help.
Yeah. Well, you're the perfect person to go to. I mean, you know, is there a means of anybody being able to contact you directly and speak? Do you do that or no?
I'm on LinkedIn as my biggest platform, as you mentioned in the beginning. I'm on there every day. I mean, people can send me a message right on there.
Mm-hmm.
I also run a Facebook page called First Responders First. and an Instagram page with the same name, and I'm on those every single day. So I do get messages from time to time. I get requests to do Zoom meetings or call people. And, obviously if I get like 5,000 requests, I can't do them all, but so far I have been able to do that, or I've been able to refer them to people that they can talk to or talk about programs that I've been through. Because I've been through two great programs called the West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat, and the other one's called Save a Warrior. And both are phenomenal programs. The first one, West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat, it's only open to first responders, and they have them all over the US. It's about a week-long residential retreat. Save a Warrior, though, is open to the military, whether you're active duty, you're a veteran, but it's also open to first responders, so dispatchers, paramedics, firefighters, and cops. And they're based out of Ohio and California. But the beauty of Save a Warrior is there's no cost at all to go through the program. You just have to physically get yourself there. And the program is all funded by donations, 100%.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. I definitely, I want to share this with my networks, with some people. At the NYPD, we have a unit called PAPA. It's an outreach unit. And there's plenty of nonprofit organizations like you're mentioning that definitely help out people. But it's important, being able to speak to somebody about the smallest problem to the largest problem. It's just getting it off your mind, clearing your head, and being able to, sleep easy at night. That's
I'm still going to therapy. I mean, for
Yeah.
2.5 years, I went every single week. I go now twice a month, but like you said, you got to talk about things, and it doesn't have to be work related. It could be at home. It could be financial. You just got to be able to talk to somebody in 100% confidentiality that you can trust, that it's not going to be shared. It's not going to go anywhere, and it's not going to be held against you.
And that's the reason why people don't go to the department. They don't want to ask because they're afraid of it not being trusted. They think the second that you would bring something up, it's over.
Exactly.
And it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate that the stigmas that go on in a lot of these departments, probably the majority, to be honest. We've seen it time and time again. But if we could have someone in confidence be able to speak about exactly what we're going through, that goes a long way. Definitely
And
goes a
here's
long
the
way.
key. They have to be culturally competent. I can't stress this enough. There's a lot of therapists out there. I mean, there's marriage family therapists, there's, you name it, but you have to have a culturally competent therapist. This is somebody who specializes with first responders or military. And those are the people that I work with. There's a new app I advise for called the Cortico Wellness app. And a lot of agencies are going to this across the United States. And what they do is they actually find out the culturally competent therapists in your area of your agency, and they set it up to where you can find out who these people are because they're vetted, they're trusted. Because if you just go to some random therapist, that might actually cause more harm than good.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
why if
No.
anybody's listening, they got to get us. We're different. I mean, yeah, we're human and things affect us, but we are different and we see different things. If a regular therapist were to see us, they probably going to need a therapist after talking to us. I mean, seriously, they're not ready for us. You need a culturally competent therapist.
That's a really good point. Really good point. It's actually one of my closest friends. He was going through something job related and actually off duty related mostly, and he would not talk to a therapist until he found one that was retired from the job.
Exactly.
He would not talk to anybody, and he finally found somebody, and he's like, it's so easy to speak because they talk the talk, they walk the walk, they understand it, they know exactly what the language is, they know how we speak, they know what we're going through, and it's a very easy transition.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of cops and first responders that retired, like you said, and became psychologists or therapists, and they are phenomenal. I mean, absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, they're great. So with everything that you're going through and that you've done, you're writing this book. So that's great. You're doing a book. What is it going to be called?
So it's called Frontline Trauma and the Path to Recovery. And that's the tentative title, but we're liking it so far. But hopefully it's going to be published in about 6 months. And my co-author is Dr. Shauna Springer, also known as Doc Springer. She is phenomenal. She's devoted her career to working with combat veterans in our military. And so when I talked about culturally competent, that's what I'm talking about. She gets it. She understands it. And so the way this book is going to be is 90% of it's going to be my story all the way back to childhood. It's going to explain why I became a cop, why I went into the military, all the things that happened, how I got out of it. But the beauty of this book is at the end of every chapter, Dr. Springer is going to have analysis and education, and she's going to explain things in a general sense to any first responder, any family member, anybody that's reading this book, so they get it and they understand it. And so that's why I'm so excited to be working with her. I mean, I really think this book is going to be a game changer. It's going to be huge.
That's great. I'll read it 100%. 100%
Awesome.
I'll read it. And I know people that will definitely read it as well. I'll definitely share it with my networks. So you don't have a website yet for it, but you have a Facebook group?
We do. We
Okay.
do.
What's the Facebook group?
Redefine Your Mission is actually a Facebook page.
Okay.
And I'm on there with Dr. Shauna Springer and then another author and speaker named Jennifer Tracy. And she also speaks on suicide prevention and resiliency. And so the three of us are teamed up and working on this project. And it's an amazing thing. Excellent.
You don't have a podcast yourself?
You know, I've been asked that a million times. It's not my thing. It's not my passion, but I think I've done like 25 of these interviews now.
Yeah.
So my heart goes out to people like you because you're making it happen, but I don't think I could do it. I don't think I have that skill set, honestly.
I think you could. My wife makes fun of me and says that I can't do this, but but I think you could do it, especially, bringing real life people to the stage and letting them talk about what they've gone through, if they're allowed to, if they're still on the job, if they're comfortable with that, or guys that have retired and been through it, guys and girls, I think it would be a great thing for people to speak about. And I'm sure there's some shows out there that really do it, but what you've been through, it will relate to so many people, and so many people would want to talk about that. So, I mean, listen, maybe, I'll team up with you. I'll do some of these with you to make you feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
So there's two questions that I want to ask. I always ask during the show, and I know you already mentioned one thing about you would do it again, but if you could, and if you could do it all over, the Air Force, with the police department, with now the way you are as a motivational speaker, an inspirational speaker, a mental health advocate, it's incredible. Would you take the same path and do this all again?
100%. And
awesome.
The simple reason is this: I truly am a much better person today than I was 10 or 15 years ago. That is a fact. My experiences, although very negative and traumatic, have shaped me to give me a whole new view on things, on life, on appreciation, on being present. And so I wouldn't change a thing.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Since you're out in California, I just want to give a quick shout out to one of our brand partners, Muertos Coffee. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of them. They're they're awesome coffee company out in right over there in California, and they're specifically for firefighters, but doesn't mean cops can't drink it too. But muertoscoffeeco.com, if anyone wants to go over there and grab some coffee. So last question before we wrap things up, I'm running out of time. I like to ask this question because it is Heroes First podcast. So, and sometimes it puts you on the spot. You don't know how to answer it, but I'm pretty sure you're going to have an excellent answer for this one. What does a hero mean to you?
A hero to me is just putting themselves last and putting other people and the mission first. And that's what our first responders do every single day, is they say goodbye to their spouses, more importantly to their young children, knowing they may not come home every single day, sometimes for up to 30 years. Those are heroes. Every single first responder, every single military person out there, all heroes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Michael, it was excellent speaking to you. Everyone listening, thank you all for listening to episode 4 of Heroes First podcast with our guest, Michael Sugrue. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
You've been listening to the Heroes First podcast with Robert Garland. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, share, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, make sure to visit fundthefirst.com and follow us on social media at fundthefirst. See you next time.